Ever wonder how YouTube legend MrBeast and his crew survived 7 full days in the freezing cold of the Arctic, one of the most unforgiving places on Earth? Today, we are summarizing MrBeast's breathtaking survival video, step by step, stranded in this icy hell with nothing but the clothes on their backs. These 6 friends had to build a snow fort to avoid freezing, face the constant threat of frostbite setting in within seconds, and drill through thick ice just to find food. Join us as we dive into the most crucial moments of this incredible video, where Jimmy and his team, determined to make up for their past survival failures, pushed through to the very end without giving up.
Picture this. You're dropped right into a blinding white expanse of freezing snow. The wind is cutting through you like a knife, and the sun is rapidly dipping below the horizon. You've got no tent, no real supplies, just the clothes on your back, a couple of shovels, and your friends. Well, this is exactly the brutal scenario we're unpacking today. It's a grueling test of extreme human endurance, surviving 7 full days stranded in the unforgiving Arctic. In this explainer, we're going to dive into the exact strategies, the terrifying close calls, and the sheer willpower it takes to fight off hypothermia, starvation, and complete despair.
So here's the game plan for this explainer. We're looking at the stages of survival. Day 1 is all about shelter and fire. Day 2, battling the freezing cold. Then we hit thick ice and starvation, followed by a last chance at fishing, and wrapping up with Day 7's surprise rescue. Let's get into it.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Day 1, Shelter and Fire. Racing the sunset to avoid freezing.
Okay, so when the guys landed in half a meter of snow, food and water not even on the radar yet. The absolute overwhelming priority was just not freezing to death. You know, in the Arctic, the second that sun goes down, temperatures just absolutely plummet. Being exposed at night is pretty much a guaranteed death sentence. On day 1 with 0 tents, literally every second of daylight was a frantic dash to dig out a snow cave. They were racing the sunset, knowing that just 10 minutes in that wind could induce frostbite. By day 3, the threat escalates to severe snowstorms, all building up to the massive final test on day 7. Literally every single hour out there is a ticking clock.
And man, the contrast in how they lived as the week went on is just crazy. Night 1, pure misery. They barely carved out this tiny little cave and were packed in like sardines. It was so bone-chillingly cold that frost was covering their sleeping bags. And get this, the camera literally froze to the operator's hand. No way you can last a week like that, right? So, over the next few days, they spent hours hollowing out the walls. They essentially built what they jokingly called their mansion. Getting that extra space to just sleep without bumping elbows was a massive, massive psychological boost for them.
Moving right along to Section 2, Day 2, Freezing Cold, the daily temptation to quit.
So besides the crazy mental game of a rescue plane flying over every single day, literally offering them a warm ride home if they just agreed to shave their heads, the physical toll was getting intensely real. Chandler hit this terrifying point where he said, "My toes are turning purple." By night 2, the temperature drop was so violent that his toes lost all color. They went completely ghost white. That is the exact precursor to severe frostbite. So what do? In a totally wild display of teamwork, Darius, the cameraman, actually lets Chandler shove his freezing, bare feet right into his armpits to thaw them out. I mean, if they hadn't acted right then and there, he was losing those digits for sure.
But hey, body heat can only do so much, right? You need a fire. The problem? A massive snowstorm had just soaked all their surface wood. So how on earth do you spark a fire in a wet, freezing tundra? You gotta get creative. Step 1, they tracked down a dead spruce tree and chopped deep into the core just to find some dry wood. Step 2, and I absolutely love this, they used bird feathers they brought along as hyper-flammable kindling because the normal tinder was basically a sponge. Step 3, carefully shielding that fragile little spark from the howling wind. It was such a painstaking process, but man, that single spark literally kept them alive.
Which brings us to Section 3, Thick Ice and Starvation, the battle for calories.
Okay, by the 3rd day, things are getting incredibly sketchy. Their tiny stash of beef sticks is basically history, and they're burning thousands of calories a day, literally just shivering to stay warm. Without a huge influx of food, their bodies are going to start shutting down fast. They had to go ice fishing, but here's the brutal reality check they hit.
that is 75 centimeters, almost 2.5 feet of solid, unyielding ice on the lake. They spent grueling hours taking turns cranking this manual ice auger, only to find out the blade wasn't even long enough to hit the water. Imagine that. All that sweat, all those precious calories burned for absolutely zero payoff.
You can imagine the vibe after that. It was just soul-crushing. Trudging back to camp empty-handed, completely soaked in this freezing sweat, the group's leader actually made a really solemn vow. He said, "I promise I won't fail again." See, they'd actually failed a different survival challenge on an island in the past, and that memory was haunting them. The thought of letting the team starve out there in the freezing cold, unbearable. They knew, right then and there, tomorrow required a totally different game plan.
And this is where human ingenuity totally kicks in. If you can't drill deeper, you need thinner ice, right? But how do you find it in the middle of nowhere? Boom. They launch a camera drone, they scouted the landscape and actually spotted a river miles away, knowing that fast-moving water doesn't freeze as thick. To get there without sinking waist-deep in the snow, they strapped on cross-country skis to basically glide over the frozen lake. Oh, and back at camp, to stop the freezing ground from sucking out all their body heat at night, they harvested fresh pine branches and wove them into this really clever insulated mattress for the shelter floor. Every single roadblock they hit, they tackled with a smart solution.
All right, Section 4, Last Chance Fishing, the desperate trek for food.
So, with the drone coordinates locked in, they start trekking through this dense, snowy pine forest, even dodging giant moose tracks along the way, all on completely empty stomachs. Which really begs the ultimate question. With calorie deficits peaking, boots filling with freezing snow, and the risk of hypothermia going straight through the roof, are they actually going to be able to break this ice and catch a fish? Because if they fail here, that's it. They pop the flare, they tap out, game over. The stakes could not have been higher.
Well, they finally make it to the river, and thankfully the ice is only about 20 centimeters thick. They punch through, but then the real test of endurance begins. 4 hours. That is 4 agonizing hours of sitting completely dead still in the biting wind, just staring down into a tiny black hole in the ice. You no doubt was creeping in. The uncontrollable shivering starts. It became this massive mental tug-of-war against the screaming urge to just pack it up and go back to the warm fire at camp. But then, absolute chaos erupts. The line jerks. After breaking that ice and sitting there for 4 grueling hours, they actually hook a fish. But wait, as they're pulling it up, it snags on the jagged edge of the ice hole and slips right off the hook. Oh my gosh. In a split second of just pure adrenaline, Jimmy dives in, plunges his bare hands right into the freezing water and grabs the slippery fish before it darts away. Yes, a 7-hour saga of walking, drilling, and freezing, all resulting in their very first real meal.
And that brings us to Section 5, Day 7, Surprise Rescue, the final stretch and a shocking exit.
Having survived the absolute worst of the Arctic elements, I mean whiteout blizzards, 0 lost toes, the whole vibe finally shifts from grim survival to just pure relief and camaraderie. They feast on this fresh, perfectly cooked fish. It must have tasted like absolute heaven. Then, on the final night, they pull out this stash of hoarded chocolate, turning their freezing ice cave into an actual cozy party. They even found the energy for a massive snowball fight. And you gotta love this. Showing huge respect for the harsh wilderness that just tested them to their absolute limits, they spent their final hours breaking down camp, picking up every single wrapper, and leaving absolutely no trace behind.
And then, the grand finale. The whole week they're assuming, okay, a rescue plane or a helicopter is going to be our ticket out of here. But instead, they start hearing barking. A massive pack of gorgeous husky sled dogs comes charging right through the snowbanks. I mean, come on, what an incredibly cinematic way to end an Arctic adventure, right? Getting pulled out of the wild by sled dogs straight towards a much-needed hot shower.
So, looking at this whole explainer, the biggest takeaway here is that surviving the Arctic is not just about physical muscle. It's about relentless problem solving, trusting your team, and just having this unbreakable mindset. We watched them battle frozen cameras, dodge severe frostbite, and literally wrestle dinner out of a freezing river with bare hands. Which leaves me with one final question for you. Knowing everything you know now about the bone-chilling cold, the mind-numbing hunger, and the sheer mental exhaustion, could you survive 7 days in the Arctic with only the clothes on your back? Really think about it. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep that curiosity alive.